So my response.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to TTKU, where we're trying to keep up with all the regulatory shenanigans that happened this week. Today, we have an awesome guest. We have Vivek Pinto, who, I don't know, you were kind of a big deal at FDA for a while, and you're still a big deal with what you're doing now. So let's dive in and have you tell us about yourself, and then, of course, add your joke.
Yeah, no, the joke was the most important part.
Yes.
That was the main
took us the most time.
Yeah, so I'll try to keep intro short, but Vivek Pinto, right now I'm the Director of Medical Affairs at Precision Neuroscience, where we're making implantable brain-computer interface devices, and these are to help folks with that experience paralysis, stroke, people that are living with ALS, and really trying to see, what are the different areas that this technology can help as like a platform technology too. But prior to that, I had a long history in the FDA. I was there 12 and a half years as a reviewer, branch chief, division director, mostly in physical medicine and neuromodulation. But I had some stints across different areas. And of course, before that, I was in grad school. I was a mechanical engineer and biomechanist and had some industry experience. And it just took me about 20 years afterwards to get back to industry, which I didn't really think would take this long. But happy with the whole journey. And my joke. So Memorial Day's coming up. We did have to change plans because it's raining up here in the Northeast for the whole weekend. My joke is kind of a hybrid, but what do regulatory and camping have in common?
They're both intense.
Yeah, you got it.
Oh, seriously?
Nice. Nice. There was a Wordle once that I finally got once, and it was like Pinto, and I just kept writing Pinto in for like.
That's always your first word.
Yeah, because I was trying to figure out the best first word, and I was like, well, it'll happen at some point, and it did, and then I never played Wordle again after that.
That's amazing.
You're like, I'm done. I have peaked.
Yeah, mic drop.
Yeah.
That's so
Got that
funny.
one guested one.
Yeah. What's my starting word? Steak, I think.
I use.
Oh no,
I use
slate. I'm a slate beginner.
I use slate or stale.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then I did get it. There was the word one time, and then someone was like, "Why do you keep using that word?" And I'm like, "Because it's a good first word." And they're like, "You got to switch it up now because you've already achieved greatness with the first word." I don't know. I haven't played for a couple of weeks because I got burnt out.
I fell off too. I traveled I actually traveled to go see Shreya, like the trip to go see Shreya for Zenflow, and with the time change and like where my flight was, it like canceled my streak, and it didn't register as doing it right. And once my streak was done, I was like, I'm never doing this again. I'm not restarting the work. It's too much.
You lost you broke your stride.
Yep. So.
You just reset the clock on you. Can't you just say like, I'm actually in Hawaii right now, and then hopefully it would reset it? I don't know. How do we game the system? No? Ugh,
no, the New York Times word game broke it.
Shreya. Oh, yeah.
All right, I'm going to wait, what's your joke, Nilo? Or do you want me to go next?
You go next.
Okay. What happens when a bronchoscope runs into a laparoscope?
Gotta remember what those are.
Okay, that doesn't think the kaleidoscope. That's a little medical.
I like that one.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, Nilo, you're up.
Why are urologists great at fixing your Netflix account?
Why?
Because they can get anything streaming.
So good.
Glad we all kept it good medical today.
We did. I like that. I like this vibe. Sometimes it's like all animal jokes, but today we kind of had a little more medical spin. Before we dive into the cool new PMAs, which there are 2 of, burning question. What was your favorite role? You did a lot of different things at FDA, but like, what was one of your favorite roles while you were there, and why?
Well, you know, when I was a branch chief, that was probably where I had the most fun. And it was really being a direct supervisor. So, I was able to, mentor staff directly. I saw the exciting stuff and the really, good stuff, some of the easier stuff like informational meetings and whatnot. And then also got to dive into the hard stuff. But, as division director, it's kind of like you're always in all the hard stuff all the time. And so I still had time to help mentor, but it was mentoring managers, versus mentoring staff as much. And so I really enjoyed the time there. We were smaller in CDRH. We were kind of like a startup. And so, we didn't have all these different policy offices. 510K staff was basically like, is Margie.
Yeah.
It was as small. And so it was nice to be able to have like autonomy and decision making there, because it just wasn't, that support. So I definitely, yeah, that was probably the funnest time. And we also, coincidentally, when I started, we had this partnership with DARPA for this haptics program where they were trying to advance BCIs and advance prosthetics. So that was where, as I was rebuilding the branch, getting a lot of neuroscientists in, it was a place where there was just such excitement and novel tech, and we were able to have all these different kind of collaborations with NIA. It was just too many things to do and too many people to help. So it was a fun time. I have to say, the Flyers, I don't know if they were doing as well as they were as now. If they're here watching,
Yes.
maybe that, yeah. There are some things that are great right now, but yeah, fun. I mean, I will say too, it's so sad, but Kathleen De Laurentiis, she was when she started, she was my second mentee, and then worked for me for many years and helped other people in the offices when she, left OHD 5, and recently had passed away. And so that was it's I'm still, that's the other thing about that time. I'm still extremely close to the reviewers that were in physical medicine.
Yeah.
And that kind of happens when, first line supervising. So yeah, that was the most, that was definitely the time I cherished the most.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a pretty magical place in many ways, because you get to do so many different things. And I didn't realize that she'd passed. And Margie too, right? I feel like
Margie
it's
has to.
Yeah, we had a funeral on Halloween, which was a little bit fitting for Margie in the sense,
Yeah.
so, but
does she love Halloween or?
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't know that better.
She probably planned it for that. So.
Yeah.
Margie loved a theme party.
Yeah.
In all senses, she was a great hang.
Yeah.
But
someone told me recently that they, since I'm going to lighten the mood a little bit, that they said they want, no, this is totally, this is real.
Yeah.
But that she's like, I really want to be cremated because it'll be my only chance at a smoking hot bod. And I was like, that's good. Yeah, I'm going to have to do that too. All right, let's dive into the PMAs. There are 2 this week. I'm still curious as to last week, Nilo. We talked a little bit about the PMA that was also a class 3 in vitro diagnostic. And the 2 that came out this week, one is the Signatera CDX by Natera. It is generic. Oh, sorry, not generic name. That's the generic name. Is next generation sequencing oncology panel somatic germline variant detection system. One of the cool things about it is it took so little time. It was submitted at the end of January, and then it got approved on the 15th of this month. So, wow, breakneck speed. And then, do you want to do the other one?
No, because I didn't get a chance to look at it. So
okay. I see that you've highlighted it, so I thought that was a signal. Sorry, we're looking at Google Doc over here.
I highlighted it so I could try to look it up. I was expecting you to talk more about the first one.
Okay. Actually, I have a slide on it. Maybe I can pull up my slides. Maybe not, because I probably. Oh gosh, that sound, man. Woof. It reminds me of That's the Slack click, right?
But did my Slack thing come through? Yeah, I have Slack closed and it still came through.
I had to
Yeah.
turn all my notifications off because it stresses me out. It's like, and I turned all of my notifications off on my phone, much to the dismay of some clients, because I was like, I can't handle all of the clicking and the pinging and the things.
Yeah,
Um,
well, it's between that and the watch and everything, you just get pinged all around. So
yeah, exactly.
you're like,
Do you guys have
no.
different phones for work and personal, or
No,
is it the same phone?
it's the
Me
same
I
phone.
neither.
did at FDA. We had the second phone,
Did
but
you? They gave
I
you a
had a
second
I have
phone?
my same
BlackBerry
one.
and then I had some iPhones.
Ooh,
And
BlackBerry.
the advantage to there was they were just on different carriers, so at any point I had access to a phone. I had probably Verizon. It was AT, I don't know, but
Oh, that I do
other than
remember that. I
that,
guess I,
it just sucked
yeah.
the hold of both of them. Do you have two?
No, I don't.
No.
And people are starting to bug me that I should because the business phone is my phone, and that's not like the best because it's like on the website. And so I get a lot of spam.
Oh, oh yeah.
All right, I'll tell you a little bit about Signatera. It is NGS, so next generation sequencing, and it's for an oncology panel used for the qualitative detection of germline or somatic variants in one or more cancer-related genes. So it seems to be more generic, but it's using multiplex PCR and NGS to detect circulating tumor DNA, so ctDNA, which is pretty cool. So it can pick it up from hopefully just whole blood, peripheral whole blood collected in a collection tube. So that's pretty slick. And then the other one was the Siemens, the Atelica IM3 PSA2. Sounds like
Yeah,
a new video game or something, right?
it does a little bit.
It is a prostate specific antigen free cancer test, and it helps to detect whether or not you have prostate cancer or if it's a benign condition.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably free prostate, free PSA, kind of like free
Yeah.
testosterone. It's like unbound, and I guess that makes sense because PSA is for diagnosing BPH and prostate cancer, and I guess both of these are kind of cancer diagnostics. I have no idea what the line is between class 2 and class 3 for diagnostics. I guess maybe it's like, cancers and neonate is class 3 and everything else is class 2. I
Yeah.
probably should learn more about that. We don't do a ton of IVDs, and when we do, I call Josh Levin. So,
Yeah.
um, but we do a bunch of
Yeah.
the studies, but less on that. It's interesting. I haven't dove into it in a while.
Yeah.
But it's cool to see. That quick review time is interesting too. I wonder if they
It
had
is,
just a ton
right?
of PMAs and just submitted the data, hit their marks, and it was easy.
Do you guys know for a modular PMA, is the receipt date the date of the first module that goes in, or is it
I don't think so. I think it's the
It's the
final
last one.
one, which usually is
Yeah,
clinical.
okay? So this could have been a modular, and then like the last piece was maybe.
maybe.
I
I
like
mean,
that.
yeah, you don't necessarily know. I would think there is. I don't know about this, but and no one say, but I think there's let's say you get like a, not a, well, I guess if you get a not approvable letter, you still have like a year to respond to it with a PMA. Wow. I don't, yeah, it could be they just did, yeah, modular, or they hit the mark with the pre-submissions.
Yeah.
Um,
That's Kira Gordon is named on that one, so maybe we'll tag her in this and see if she'll
Tell us
share some deets.
how are you so good at your job?
Yeah. Nice work, Kira.
Yeah.
Can you mentor me? All right, so those were the two that came out. What's up? Oh, actually, Vivek, I think you're up next because you went to the REdI conference. So what does it stand for again? This isn't REdI. This is
It's like
REdI.
regulatory education for industry, and
Industry.
I mean, it's small business oriented. I hadn't been to it, before, but certainly with some of these new programs. I mean, they had some talks on like AI. I was hoping that there would be some talks on the Rapid program, just to learn about like what the mechanics are of it. I did. I was at a conference a few weeks ago. It's a neurosurgical conference. It's AANS, and I think it's like American Academy of Neurological Surgeons. I think, but there's a lot of these. Commissioner Carey was speaking at that, and so he actually spoke a little bit about REdI, but I didn't really think it was as accurate as what the program is, or at least what his understanding of what he was conveying. And so I'm still looking to hear some of the mechanics. The way I would understand it is that, with eligible participants and sponsors, like they would, have access to, CMS like the agency tried to with the parallel review program, and I guess maybe parts of TAP, where they would give feedback or maybe required to on the endpoints before someone would start a study.
That so I just this week gave a talk to the San Diego Regulatory Affairs Network for Allison on REdI and things like that. And one thing is and we also heard Dr. Hughes and Dr. Tarver talk about it at the MDIC conference a couple weeks ago too. I don't think all of the mechanics are fully sussed out yet. I think there is some like the how is not fully like in those specifics, but the idea that they are communicating is exactly what you're talking about, is that CMS would come to the table for the people who are eligible. So that's going to be any breakthrough class 3 device and any class 2 device that's also in TAP would theoretically be eligible for it. And then they're going to limit the amount of participants per year.
Okay, so they will
total. Yeah, and it's going to be interesting to see how much CMS. I mean, the parallel review program is still there, but it's really like not used because of lack of resources from CMS. They just don't have the funding to commit to that. But there's a lot of things that are like really open about that program of like, how do we incorporate CMS feedback as regulatory? Like, is it going to affect the approval? If you don't meet your CMS recommendations, do you have to take the CMS recommendations if you're in the program, or can you ignore them and go, okay, we're just not going to get the funding at our approval or clearance? We'll bypass it and go back to a traditional model. So I think they're still working through it. Allison, I think it's still out for public comment. It's not official yet. Like,
I think so. It's not. It's not. It's like they had a
the
bunch
FR
of
notice.
fanfare, right?
Yeah,
there was like photos taken.
Yeah, the FR notice isn't even up yet, so it's still like a while away from going in, because there was also the thing with NTAP removal. It did have
That's big. I think people aren't talking about that. They're talking about like, what is REdI? Like, oh, that sounds exciting, but like this many companies are going to get REdI, and like NTAP's going away. Like
it's a big shiny object. Look over here while we take your wallet, kind of thing. A little bit
feels kind of like 2026.
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Or even
But
every
I don't
10
think
years.
that's not official yet either. There is time for public comment on the NTAP removal too. So like for the for the 4 people listening, tell your friends, comment on that thing if you don't like it.
Yeah.
It is pretty curious. I mean, I remember when this breakthrough came out, and certainly like we would see other organizations within FDA or outside utilize those decisions for their purposes. I would say it does, it affects how you manage that program then too. So I'm just also saying, okay, this is maybe the same situation where, okay, whatever comes out, then you get these inconsistencies with decisions on breakthrough. But I guess that's the reality of it, and why we're all here to help folks understand. But yeah, so other things, so I didn't get to go for both days of the conference. I went, for the first day. That was actually my first time back on campus in just about over a year, because I started with Precision May 9th, and I had actually been on leave since several weeks before in April. Actually, probably right before that riff, because I wasn't there in person for that. And so like my last time at campus was over a year. I mean, lots happened. So it was nice to be in the great room. I saw like Elias and some other folks, like Owen was given, the speech for CDRH. I did pick up like some key themes from him, like one, which I guess we tell a lot of sponsors as well is, you know, making sure like they're telling the story. As reviewers just don't really have time or they can't have recollection. Like people are jumping around the meetings, and then the upper managers, like, they don't always hear the story of why people had like gone in to create something, and then what they found. And so one thing that kind of was a new piece for me is what he was asking for is, with whatever clinical evidence that people were generating, is to let them know what surprised them. And that's something I have not heard from sponsors, and that was interesting to hear that request from Owen. To what this, and I think these all these talks should be available online. I saw, like, I went back to my house to, I had some meetings, so I watched some of them that way, but they should still be there on YouTube. Elias told me like they would be available, so anyone can go back to these. But there was, the communication piece was interesting. There were several talks on like AI regulation and what the mechanics. I think a big message was that this isn't new. Like ML has been in medical devices and been part of different clearances and approvals for decades, but now with the different additional technologies and buzz, they do feel the need that they're going to need to actually have some kind of output of communication for around this. But the message was this is not foreign to them of how to handle it, and they have different methods, maybe similar to like the self-cert program of how can manufacturers assess themselves whether something would need like a letter to file versus a submission, and then had some examples where there was like warning letters and whatnot of companies that crossed that line and shouldn't have.
Well, that'll be interesting. I always love examples when I'm like, ooh, okay.
Yeah, there's probably going to be more. I mean, there's a lot of stuff coming out, and real world evidence was brought up a bit. I think there's probably going to be much more of a push there. They had a new guidance with additional examples there, where probably even like the reviewers didn't realize that, oh, this is actually real world data that we're using as real world evidence and not traditional, clinical trial. And so I would, probably pay attention to those two, or I guess the three areas. But other than that, they had quality systems and some other things that were the day two that weren't really my area in the agencies.
I didn't really. The last time I went to the REdI conference, it wasn't on campus. It was up in College Park area. But for anyone that's like new in regulatory, it's like I think it's like a really great like educational like basics. They do a lot of too of just like the framework, and then some. It's great to hear from some of the new stuff too, like you were saying, the real world evidence and hot topic type stuff. And I think you can usually tell on the agenda of like, all right, this section is going to be like stuff I already pretty know. Maybe it's good for a refresher. But these sessions are, the Owens and the people talking about the new programs and things like that. So.
Yeah, just meeting some of the faces, or like meeting in person some of the folks that you interact with on files and that. Like, I always loved going, and they used to travel around the country. Like, it would be in different locations. And so it was always fun. Like, afterwards, we'd all get a beer with the FDA folks, and I don't know, it was always really collegial.
There's
you're saying, I mean, that one-on-one time, and I saw Owen and others giving that time to these sponsors. I mean, I just want to say hi to them, because I need to chat about anything, but like I couldn't. I'm still under this obligation. I thought that was really nice, because a lot of the people there, you could tell that they're novices in this. They're scientists, or they're coming from other products from like other centers. Center representatives were just giving them that time to have one-on-ones and to guide them. That's something I really liked about. I mean, that was probably like what I enjoyed, maybe the most out of the experience, at FDA is, you really have that chance to be like a teacher, and just to help people. And so that's nice that, I mean, it felt like things were getting more back to normal just in the great room in the area where we were. I know it's different inside the walls of
Behind closed doors.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're persevering.
I there's a great point of like it's sort of like the entry level in some of the topics that they bring up. And every year I would go to like the devices because I wanted to hear what's new or learn from that. But now that I know that they're online, and I think there's like some YouTube link, I heard some people were having a hard time accessing it that were trying to join virtually because they were like getting error messages or like, this is at capacity, you cannot join. But my goal is to like go in and do the drug track because I feel like I always tell companies, I'm like, I know nothing about drugs. Like I'm so device myopic that like I I feel like I should learn a little more.
No, same actually. I mean, I kind of wish I had done that, but I'm gonna, kind of put that on the agenda if I go to like Fiddler, these other ones
Yeah.
is to get into some of these other areas where we just didn't really have the time internally to. I mean, if you had one file that was an NDA or something like that, I don't know, like or combination products.
Ooh, you said the C word.
Oh yeah, and we segue.
Before we unleash Nilo about OCP, we do have a question from Kate. She asked, as former FDers, do you have thoughts on the effectiveness commenting on register notices individually versus through one of the medtech trade orgs? I don't. Any comment from you guys?
I can comment because I did have to I participated on a couple of them for guidances. But the Federal Register ones that everything gets reviewed, but I think the amount of effort into responding to the comments when it goes through a medtech trade org like AdvaMed or something like that, I think, or even just large companies that have lawyers, the way the comments are written tend to force a more comprehensive review by FDA. And so you get a more structured response. They'll often bucket a bunch of similar comments together. So if you're just an individual, I think you have a higher likelihood of your comment being like bucketed with someone else's, which isn't to say though that they don't look at it. I know it was like required that we had to mark that we looked at every single comment that was on the things we were looking at. So I think it helps if you kind of group together as one to make sure everything's aligned and written well, but it's worth it to do it individually if you don't have that opportunity.
Yeah, that's a good point. You're right. I guess there's pros and cons to both. Like if you have something that's way off that, maybe is just, not what the advocacy organization or the medtech organization is going to be, including, then, you're free to, and then it is going to have to get categorized, or at least addressed. And I have seen somewhere that's like, one comment in kind of an area. But yeah, if you're banding together with more people and have similar things, maybe, like there are answers to some of these that you can get quicker that the med tech organization is going to be able to provide you that it's you won't have to wait. So it can always do both.
I have a question. Is Elias as nice as he seems like in real, like, because he seems like I've met him and he's nice, but like, is he like?
No, he's awesome. When I started in cardio, he was still a cardio reviewer. He was just about to move over to Dice, and like he's awesome. He's like one of the nicest.
Just seems like the nicest guy, but then I was like, I wonder if he's got like this dark side that he's just like, oh, I hate that.
Maybe, but I've never seen it come out.
But no one ever seen it. Okay, fair.
Give him a couple more glass of wine, maybe. But
maybe.
I've never seen it.
He used to mentor a lot of people. I never got to participate in like the leadership readiness program.
Yeah.
Like there were different rules around it by the time I became a branch chief, but I got to mentor, many staff through that. And Elias was kind of like the leader of the mentors. And so he just took, he just took so much ownership. Even now, he generally wants to help people. And I just honestly, like, there's a few people I really wish I got to spend more time with when I was in the agency. Like he is one. Matt Hillebrenner's another one. Like it's like so there's some really good people that aren't there, but they're still trying to help. So um, yeah, I don't know about his dark side. When you see it, I guess you can let.
Uh,
Greedy
hey,
knows.
speaking of drugs, yeah, Greedy's watching. Um, the the guidance documents. I know we rarely touch on drugs on this, but like one of the things that I always look at is like all the guidance documents that are coming out. There's been a boatload from CDER recently, and they had a bunch of guidance on opioid analgesic drugs, considerations for benefit risk, development of non-opioid analgesics for acute pain, um, development of local anesthetic drug products with prolonged duration of effect. Like there's so many that came out. Did they ever reach out to CDRH to get your input of like how you were reviewing these things, or was it just always felt so siloed to me? Like,
Things are very siloed. I guess like fundamentally, like there's just different regulations, but also, I mean, there's different study designs, and you have different minds. Like when we reached out for help, it was to get some expertise we didn't have, or just some understanding. Um, and so like maybe at the upper levels, like they were collaborating a bit more with the opioid stuff, but yeah, that's I haven't kept up with that part of it, but that was kind of a major part of the division for a bit for two of my teams. um and and the thing is, like, there are these different types of devices that that help people that are they're in this intractable state. So um I'd hope that people are willing to try the ones on a risk-based approach for themselves too, so that they can not expose themselves to unnecessary risks. At the same time, they're probably pretty costly too. So if there is, I mean, methods to help identify who were responders post-market and disseminate that, at some devices, that would probably be I mean, I don't know if a guidance document's appropriate. Maybe one of these societies, like, or that makes like guidelines might be. Yeah, there's just fundamental differences between the centers.
yeah,
And seniors also trying to be a bit more progressive too.
yeah, yeah. I feel like there's like I know whenever we submit files to the review teams in CDRH, it's like, oh, there's a drug person that's joining or something, like one of the there was a time when there were a bunch of biostatisticians came over, right, from CDER, and we're like, oh, I guess we're going over to CDRH now, which probably was, they were also probably was a pay cut associated with that, because I know the folks at CDRH get paid less. But I'm like, they do things so differently, and
Yeah.
which is good
They
and bad.
educate and all, and then
Yeah.
you gotta hope that like the lead reviewer and the manager kind of do some of that education too. Um, but in the end, reviewers, wherever they are, it's their job to give recommendations. I just always try to ask staff that, look, like, I want to see the scientific recommendation and the clinical recommendation, but also I'd want to see how does that fit in with the regulations. And not that want to like pick one or the other necessarily. It's just that I want to see like the totality of what we can excavate from this data and what our knowledge is of the science. Um, like, as long as that occurs, then the manager still can see whatever center there are, like what's appropriate for their regs and the policies.
Yeah, especially if there's like I've started doing more research into like what clinical studies exist for maybe a specific disease, especially if it's like one that a company's going after for their device, because I'm like, okay, we shouldn't have to rewrite all of the endpoints and things if that's like it's there's a drug that does that as well. And so using those is kind of like a general, almost like, what is it, like general use of a standard, but like using a drug and like the indications as a general guide, that's helpful.
No,
I
I
do.
do see there's this convergence. Oh, go ahead.
I
Now
was I was gonna say there was always a weird, especially in certain review groups, though, that sense on the device side that if there was a drug out there, the drug was inherently safer than a device or an implant or something like that. Always, especially I can think, especially in the urological and pelvic health groups, that they would like every device is only if you've failed all these medications, and we're like there are really bad side effects like mental health and like for like
Systemic, right? There's yeah, there's
systemic
so
side
many
effects and
things.
like people who don't tolerate them, and we're like why are you forcing this, like is there like a is there a pharma connection here? Why do you think that this taking something is like automatically less risky than something that you're making us go through all this work to show that it's safe, and you're still forcing, you're removing the choice from patients? And I always thought that that was, or physicians, and I always thought that was really like odd,
Crazy.
because even this, like even some of the societies, I'm thinking specifically around like urological and women's pelvic health, like weren't recommending this, but it's on all the labels. It's like you have to fail these types of things before being used. And I think there's examples in cardio and probably neuro as well.
definitely some in neuro, and it is like, I mean, that's a really tough thing. One of the things I was trying to push for, I didn't really get traction with the upper office folks, was that we don't have like customer journey maps that are kind of typical in non-medical areas, but like are so relevant here because we have all our different OHTs, and as a patient or a person growing up living their life, like on the physical medicine side, like we're seeing them throughout, but like with some of these conditions, it's like they're getting treatments across the board, from different centers, different offices, and there isn't crosstalk, and we really don't know what that experience is of what they're going through. And if the reviewers did understand that, clinicians may, but if the reviewers also understood that, then they may have more appreciation for, yeah, is it right to expose? I mean, actually, there were some indications that we proved that historically we're in that direction. You have to fail certain things in order to do, and with the evidence you're like, look, this is we're not going to continue it, and we're going to prove some of these other things. But it opened the door and access so that people can have choices, because some of these side effects are like, I mean, it's worse than the condition some
Yeah.
patients tell me, and it's like, okay, this is, I mean, it's pretty bad. So I do think we need to keep pushing the envelope there by educating, and teaching the FDA staff, what's really going on. And the other area that is really emerging, I don't know if you've seen it. I've seen it on a few different conferences. Like since I started medical affairs, I started to go to those kind of conferences too. But the patient focused drug development group in Cedar, that is something that they actually started in 2012 when I started. I didn't realize it. I knew that they existed later on as a division director, but I didn't know everything that they were doing. But that group is really on to something. They're really trying to focus on the target users and getting their voices. And one thing I didn't know until a few weeks ago, I went to the Christopher Reeves Foundation,
Mm.
and some it was such a great conference. I mean, I must have spoken with maybe like 30 to 40 people living with paralysis,
Wow.
and having great conversations with them. And so one group was giving a presentation on how they're presenting to the agency on representing the group on those voices, and said that there is a voice of the patient report that they're going to be having as like an output. And I was like, I heard of the voice of the patient, but I never heard of a report. And I looked on the website on FDA's, and there's like hundreds of these things for different areas, whether it's a few people living with the disorders or hundreds. And there are these reports, and that's something else you should look at too. With your question about cross center convergence, because the idea is about identifying what matters to the target users. And I don't call them all patients, because some are not. Some are just like people living with these diseases, and then figuring out how to measure it. Because what's happening is that historically you see a lot of devices that that get cleared, get approved, get to different like milestones along this total product life cycle, but then they don't get clinically adopted. And it's like, why is it? Or even they don't get approval, but they're like, okay, this clinical study yet, like people were saying they need it and they want it, they're getting all these benefits, but the primary outcome failed. And a big problem is, people develop technologies, they identify what are existing outcome measures, and there's a lot of good reasons to do that and to pick them. They're easy, cheap, they're perception of validation. And then the review stuff on the FDA is like, great, we want you to use those. Or if they see something new, they're like, we don't have a good way to compare it. You need to use what we historically used. And then it's all missing the mark. It's not measuring what actually matters to the target users. And so focusing there first, is kind of this like holy grail for all the buckets. Like FDA, CMS, clinical adoption. And this group is trying to teach that. Identify what matters, measure what matters. It's kind of like what I'm kind of going with the branding with it. And so, take a look at those, because, those reports are pretty powerful. They're from the users, and it's what each center can kind of converge on is to see, okay, they're telling us what they want us to prioritize. That's going to make an impact in their life. Now figure out how to measure it.
It's interesting because I know that there's been like a push in CDRH for additional adoption of patient-reported outcomes and things like that, which is kind of right in line with this. But I have definitely, I think, as a reviewer and then in the industry, when we have projects that are there for better health access or things that acknowledge the issues with the American healthcare system of, mammographies aren't covered until women are 40. Prostate exams aren't covered for men until they're 50, for in general, right? So like technology that might not work as well as those things, but are easier to access when you're 30 or 35, or better for rural healthcare, or better for lower funded hospital systems and things like that, that the FDA doesn't do well with that and never have. And I would love to see that shift of like, how do we get these types of things that may not meet the gold standard, but that's only available in the academic ivory towers type things, or are only covered by insurances after a certain point. And, how do we get that to patients has always been like a driver of mine. Like, I think that it's one of the biggest criticisms I have with FDA often is that they don't have the support to support those kind of things, I think. And maybe things like connection with REdI and coverage and things like that makes them, they've always said, hey, that's not us, that's CMS, right? We don't care about the
not my problem,
aspect. Not
right?
my problem. We don't care about your commercial things. We're just looking at the science here. Maybe with the more connection and talk with insurance providers, that becomes more like comes in the conversation and consideration more. I'd love to see it, because it is super frustrating that I get where they're coming from. It's the framework, but there needs to be an allowance for access too. Or
if we really care about totality of evidence, like there's more evidence beyond the bench testing or clinical evidence. It's like, what else is there? And it's oftentimes the patients are not in those rooms, right? Pre-subs very rarely have somebody who's like living with the conditions, but often the physicians will be like, these are the stories from my patients. Like, I am in the trenches with these folks every day. I think part of, the issue is also, it's so scary to say yes, right? At FDA. I think a lot of folks are just like, woo, if somebody gets hurt, that's on me. And I feel like, and
so much is on the managers too. Like what, they really, like you said, give support. And there were several that really tried to push those boundaries to open access. I mean, like, Bill Mizell, Randy Brockman, like, learned a lot of lessons from them. But it takes a lot of alignment throughout, like from the reviewer, the manager, all the way up, to create those channels. And so hopefully with the staff that's taking over and the new staff that are coming, they can, like really, test like what's like the meaning of all of these, like, yeah, totality of evidence, safety and effectiveness. When we say access, like, how broad do we mean?
What does that mean? Yeah.
Yeah, because you can interpret these regs the way you need to be effective. So
Yeah.
Holly did put it in the chat that the PROs have been incorporated into eStar, but I will say that the way FDA currently treats patient-reported outcomes is that they have to be, validated, and you almost need a clinical study to support your PROs,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
One of my
before you have
findings
your
on.
actual clinical study that is using PROs. So it's just it ends up not being functional for an actual budgeted trial, unfortunately, at this point. And I think that's changing. There is places where like we're incorporating, and I do think this is where AI and electronic health records and claims data and the actual push for real world data might come better. This is where I can see it being more incorporated. We're going to end up hitting time without hitting any of our agenda.
Look at us. Well, we don't have. So those are the main things. I think that I'll just say there's 2 new modules on CDRH Learn. Another shout out to DICE because they did one on ELP, or no, sorry, not ELP. There's a new one on incorporating voluntary patient preference information over the TPLC, and it's kind of buried in there, so you got to look for it. And then I'll put the link in the chat though here. And then also there's a new tempo module. So yay, there's an update on tempo, right? I still haven't heard anything back from the group, but there's a presentation and the transcript and the video, and they've like that one's also buried, and it doesn't even say like new module next to it as of yesterday. I was like, so you have to go to like specialty digital and then then control F and just type in tempo. But anyway, those are 2 things. And then new ELP topics went online. That's it. That's the only last 3. So let's let, one of the main things we need to do today is talk about office combination products. Do you want to go down that road?
I will give it the brief thing. So being, trying to keep the positive thing is one, James Bertram is on top of OCP, and he's a wonderful human being, and he really tries hard to like communicate with sponsors. And I've got, but I think the process for OCP is, if it looks like a duck and it sounds like a duck, it's a drug, according to OCP, because it is the process. You can put together the best arguments in the world, supported by precedents and science. It is essentially, I'm just gonna say, it's ignored. They've been taking for pre-RFD over a year to review to come to the exact same conclusion that they came before on stuff where we have a litany of predicates and things like that are out there, and just like it comes down to, no matter what your science is, it comes down to just a simple, well, that's just your opinion, man, kind of reaction, and we think it's a drug. And it sucks because like it's not protecting the public health. There's no benefit to regulating these products that are clearly devices as drugs. And it's just like, all right, cool. US doesn't get access to these things because there's no way that the companies can, for something that is clearly a device, take the weight of the GMP requirements of a drug on something that's so low scale. It's just the regulations of drugs are set up for pill manufacturers, not for devices, and it does not make any sense. And the whole process sucks. And I really
You're first, folks.
I'm furious about it. I know Allison, one of your colleagues,
I've
Mark,
been there too.
Is does a great presentation for St. Cloud, State University in Minnesota. Does a whole thing, and it's like, it's just one of those things that like the process is terrible, the end conclusion is terrible, and there is not a great way to, outside of, it almost comes back to like what everyone is frustrated with, like health insurance thing, is they're going to say no or give you a bad thing because they're like daring you to fight it, because it's like, okay, maybe you want to get into litigation about this and go through an appeals process. That's going to take another year and a ton of money, and like they're just going to bleed you dry. And I just get so frustrated with the whole process because we've had it happen multiple times where it's just like, what is this? Who are you serving, FDA, by making this decision? And I don't think
Yeah.
it's not considered in I think the mission of the FDA is abandoned when it goes to OCP. There's nothing about that process that's protecting the public health
Abandoned
or
hope.
promoting the public health.
Eat
So
all who enter here.
that's my
Yeah.
that's my rant.
Well, I think whenever I think about like the definition of a medical device, right, and it's in section 201H, anything that it excludes products that achieve their primary purpose through the chemical action or metabolism, which are classified as drugs. And I often think of like everything has some sort of chemical action on the body of man, right? Like I mean, I think about like titanium screws because I always go back there because it's ortho, and I'm like, there will be some sort of chemical. There's like no way that you cannot have a chemical interaction with a device if it's touching you in some way, hence biocompatibility. And so, but I'm always like, it's, I like you're saying if it looks like a duck and it acts like a duck, it's a drug. Because that's what it's felt like too for me sometimes. I'm like, wait, what? Like, I had someone at FDA say, like, he was like, I did my PhD on this topic. He was upset that something got classified as a drug. He's like, I did my PhD on this, and I was trying to tell OCP that this is a device. And they were like, yeah, no, it's a drug. And he was like, I thought I was the expert in this, but I guess not. So
There's nothing at the FDA that is more back room, 6 people with cigars kind of thing, like 12 angry men coming to
I'm
the
gonna get
same
kicked off the
conclusion.
air. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
no, I agree with you.
um
Maybe I'm gonna pass this over back to Vivek because you said something earlier that is like one of the things I cherished about you in that leadership role at FDA, and one of the things that I feel like I wish you could just share the wealth of this of like there is creativity around interpretation of the guidance and the regs. Like, I mean, regulations are regulations, and then, but I've seen so many things that I'm like, that doesn't fit under that regulation, but someone said it works and made it happen, and patients benefited from that. So, in these last few minutes, share some of your insights into like how you viewed that at the agency.
Yeah, like there's definitely different thoughts about it. Like one, Medufa is a powerful thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes it plays for, all of us. Sometimes it plays against us, and then certain decisions are made, and all of a sudden they're law, right? So then you have to consider that. Um, like
unless you're a
I learned so much from people for me. I mean, Mike Hoffman, first of all, like he was, my one of my first permanent manager there, and he's a good friend, but learned so much from him on like this flexibility and how to become a regulator. Like he was one where, and I also ended up at this place where you make decisions. You're there long enough to make decisions and see the outcomes of them, and many of them. And so then you kind of take this more responsible approach to being a regulator and teaching how to do it, because you can always find stuff in everything. Like, and when you get people that are new coming in, they're going to look at the regulations as very black and white, and so then that's why like things that exist, like the benefit risk worksheet, like the actual like not just the criteria, but some of the things that how it leads you down looking at the benefits first, helps with its interpretation. And so I hope that folks learn that and build on it, and then also like find that way to protect patients, but don't forget about promoting public health too. And so I do think with everything that's happened with the changeover, it's going to take some time to evolve, to get back to that in some areas, and then build on it. But hopefully, like some folks that are there, I'd left, like leave that kind of legacy that, like how to show how people can make decisions. That looking at this whole customer journey, looking at maybe this rapid program kind of gives some light on, okay, it like you might think as a regulator, like, okay, like if I say yes, I am setting precedent. Everyone's going to, use this in other ways I haven't thought of. It's going to open the door where people are not going to do clinical trials anymore, or they have these substandard ones that don't meet, their individual thresholds for what should be right. And there's all these other checks and balances before something would actually reach a patient, or before an actual risk would come to a patient. And so it's like, it's not like they don't have to feel they're alone in that. There's a lot that goes into healthcare that they just may not know about, and feel, this weight on them. But once you open the door, and like, so I'll give you, this is, hope we can finish in the time. I had the privilege too of actually meeting with some of the people that were participants in studies that I didn't realize it, and to see the impact that it had in their life. I went to Comedy Cellar with, just an amazing individual, and to think that they wouldn't be here if not for that like principal investigator, to create something, take the chance to do all the hard work to bring that therapy to the patient, for us to say, okay, we have this limited amount of data and time, but we think this is in the best interest. And to see that, they sharing a beer with them, like the agency folks don't see that. They don't get to go to conferences as much. They don't go into an expo and be like, my God, I had influence on all of these different areas that are now impacting. It is real. And so, it's like, it wouldn't happen unless you took that risk of saying yes. And so,
ooh, I just got chills. Thank you. Like, that is so cool that you got to meet with that.
It was amazing. Such amazing people. Even going to this Christopher Reeves Foundation.
Yeah.
Seeing it just galvanized me even more, and it it really kind of focus you on, except for, of course there's the business side of things, but just focus on the people that are benefiting from this, and how happy you can make them. It's pretty special that we all get to work in this.
Yeah. Ugh. And with that, in our last minute, I want to say happy birthday to the MEDUFA, or the medical device amendments. So not MEDUFA, the medical device amendments, which turn 50 in this weekend. So yeah, because I feel, and clearly I love medical devices. There's a device for that, as my shirt says, because I'm such a device nerd, and think, why are we giving so much attention to drugs when, hey, now we're 50 years old? People should, now that we're in our midlife, we should really start being number one. We're number one.
Yeah.
All right, Vivek, thank you so much for joining us. This has been it was nice to keep up on some of the reg stuff, but also just hearing some of your thoughts and your story is super cool. So appreciate your time.
Thanks for inviting
cool stuff.
While doing these.
Yeah, love it. All right, see you guys next week. Adios. Bye.
Bye.
Hold on, rewind. What did they say? Allison and Nilo just winging away. Regs and guidance, we'll try our luck. Just two folks out here trying to keep up.